So next up, we're going to be looking at function notation. So just remember that the relationship between function notation, something like this, and something like this, is just identifying that we have a function in terms of x. So this is f of x. So if I were to put something in an input value for x, we would get an output value for this function. Okay? So imagine I said f of -2. This means f where I input the value -2. So let's input -2 in. So that means -2 is where x is. So I'm going to replace every x with -2. Okay? So in doing that, this is saying f, when I plug in -2, is going to give me this. So I want to calculate what happens over here. So we're going to end up with -8 minus 3. So we'll end up with -11. So our final answer is this. It's saying our function, when I've plugged in an input of -2, is giving me an output of -11. Okay? Let's do the same thing over here. So this is a P of R. So our R is being replaced by 10 this time. So I'll replace all the R's with 10. And again, this is P when I put an input value of 10. Is going to give me an output of this calculation. So it's going to become 100 minus 1. So when I input 10 into this function, I output 99. So the other case I could give you to do a calculation is, what if I say f of x is 20? Can you find x? So this time we're going to substitute. We know f of x, the whole thing is 20. So I'm going to replace f of x completely with 20. And then you'll notice the only thing left is an x. So that's our unknown. We're going to do some algebra. So we'll add 4 to each side to get 24 is equal to 3x. Divide both sides by 3. So we'll get 8 is equal to x. So this is telling me when I input a value of 8, my output is 20. Or if I know my output is 20, I would have had to have put in an 8 into this function. Same thing over here. G of A is equal to 12. So I'm going to replace G of A completely and totally with 12. Okay? When I do that, we end up subtracting 10 from each side. And then I divide both sides by -2. So I'll end up getting -1 is the value of A. So this means to get an output of 12, I would have had to have put a -1 in. Okay, now to make sure we understand that our two variable and our function notation are related, we need to make sure that we can write in both directions. Okay, so I'm going to start down here actually. So to rewrite y is equal to 4x plus 2, y, we just represent y as f of x. Okay, y is kind of the exception case. We don't change this into y of x, we change it into f of x. Okay, but in every other case, you just take the variable and you put the domain variable in a set of brackets beside it. So that being said, if we wanted to work in reverse, so start with f of x and change it into a just 2 variable. This one, f of x, would become y is equal to 3 of x minus 1. And in this case, I no longer need to have that t in a set of brackets. So it's just c is equal to t squared minus 10. And then when we're looking at applying that understanding, we have an equation that represents the cost of dollars for a feast for an Arctic sports competition where n is the number of people attending. So describe the function and write the function in function notation. So we could say the function represents the cost of an Arctic sports competition depending on the number of people attending. Hmm? And then if we want to write this in terms of a function notation, it's currently in a 2 variable. So we need to change this to now have the domain value in a set of brackets right beside C. Okay? So that's good. Oh, so that was actually still A, just continued. Okay? And then B says, can we find C of 100? Okay, so that means we're replacing N with 100. So we're saying 100 people attended. So if 100 people attended, we're going to see how much money we made. So this should be 2,500 plus 100. So you should make $2,600. So what does this represent? That is a big important part of this math, is understanding what your answer means. So this is telling us when 100 people attend, you make $2,600. And then B is saying, okay, well, what if I've made $5,000? How many people would have had to attend? So we're going to replace C of N completely with 5,000. So we'll do some algebra. We'll subtract 1,000 from both sides to get 4,000. And then we're going to divide both sides by 25, which is going to leave us with 160. So the meaning of this one is that 160 people need to attend to make $5,000.